Hello and welcome to Continental Prime, reaching you live from our studios in Lagos, Nigeria. My name is Felicity Ezewike, and here are the top stories at this hour. Nigeria's upper legislative chamber passes controversial petroleum industry bill 13 years after it was first presented. South Africa's highest court clears President Cyril Ramaphosa of willfully misleading lawmakers over campaign donations. And we have updates on the coronavirus as African countries will this weekend receive the first shipment of COVID-19 vaccines donated by the United States. We'll bring you details shortly. We begin in West Africa, where the Nigerian Senate has passed the controversial Petroleum Industry Bill known as PIB. The bill passed on Thursday after careful consideration of each of the clauses. The Senate, before passing the bill, met behind closed doors with the Minister of State for Petroleum, Timothy Silva, and the Group Managing Director of the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, NNPC, Mele Kyari. The passage of the bill comes exactly 13 years after it was first presented to the National Assembly in 2008. Joining us now for more on the controversial energy bill is energy correspondent Adeola Yusuf. Thank you very much for joining us on the news.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. My pleasure.
13 years in the making. What took it so long?
Okay, thank you so much. There is an addition to that information about 13 years. Actually, the petroleum industry bill started about 20 years ago during the regime of former President Olusegun Obasanjo. And there has been foot dragging on that bill because of so much interest the bill has generated. You recall that Nigeria is the country that depends largely on oil and gas. And because oil is the cake that everyone has his knife to cut his share, anytime an issue pertaining to a reform of that oil industry comes up, there will be so much interest. And it's because of that interest, we have the interest on the part of the international oil companies, the producers of crude. We have interest pertaining to the politicians. We have interest pertaining to the businessmen. We have interest pertaining to the host community, and so on and so forth. So that has been the reason there has been this a step forward and about 5-step backward scenario that we have seen concerning that bill. So for about 20 years, the bill has, has been on the tongue of the Nigerian government.
Hello, Adeola, can you hear us? I think our network has interrupted him, but if you can hear me, there's a lot of comments about the good that this bill has for the petroleum industry. And one of them is the sanitizing of the NNPC, ensuring more accountability and, of course, making it a full-fledged company under statutory oversight with better returns for its shareholders. Can you please break this down for us?
Okay, thank you so much. Part of what we have in the bill, and before I talk about that one, it's important that I say that it's not yet a rule for Nigerians to celebrate the passage, because some years ago, the Petroleum Industry Governance Bill was passed the same way, and it was sent to the president for assent, and the president didn't assent that bill. So we still have about 3 hurdles for this bill, to pass. But having said that, you asked a question about reforms or transformation in the NNPC, and that is one of the key areas that this bill, has come to address. In actual fact, what the bill envisages or what the bill prescribes is that the NNPC is transforming into a commercial entity. The tradition of trying to ensure that I have an uncle that works with NNPC, then definitely whether I'm competent or not, I will be employed. That era will gone if eventually this bill passes through the three orders I talk about. There is one thing that is so fundamental about that reform or transformation of NNPC. In actual fact, the NNPC's sale, the NNPC stake is part of the stakes, are going to be sold through initial public offerings. So everybody, every Nigerian with that financial, chest power will be able to buy into NNPC. You understand? So with that, there will be more accountability, there will be more transparency. Before now, the GMD of NNPC, the present GMD of NNPC, has outlined, has been able to do a lot of things to deep-root transformation and transparency. You recall that for the first time in the over 40 years history of the corporation, report of the corporation, audited one was published for the first time. And on monthly basis, we have been having the M4, the monthly financial and operational report of the NNPC published. So, but with this, with the passage of the bill, we are going to have that transparency and accountability well institutionalized. So it is a good thing, but because of what I know about this bill and the history, I know it's not yet rule for Nigerians to celebrate because of those three fundamentals.
I know you keep cautioning that it is not yet Uhuru, but there is so much that this bill, if eventually fully passed and assented by the president, will do for the people. So in a few moments that you can, say about 30 seconds to 1 minute, tell us some of the benefits this bill will have for Nigerians.
Okay, number one, we've mentioned the NNPC, the transparency and accountability in NNPC. The number one tool, which is so fundamental, is the recognition and reward for the host community. You could see that the host community has been the one, laying the egg, the golden egg, but suffering a lot about it. So now this bill, if reconciled, because there are some differences in what the House of Representatives passed and what the Senate passed. There's going to be a need for reconciliation first. You understand? If that is reconciled, we are having between 3% and 5% of investment that every oil company, has made in an host community, reinjected into that host community for development. Then there's this issue of gas flaring. The fines that they are awarding on gas flaring will now go to the host community that are suffering it. That is aside. Then we have spoken about the NNPC. We have spoken, and there are some agencies of government in the oil and gas industries that have overlapping functions. Some of them will be scrapped, while some of them will be matched. So that is going to streamline, the waste in the industry. You will understand that there is corruption too. There has been corruption in the industry. Once transparency and accountability are institutionalized, that is going to reduce drastically.
All right.
And so on and so forth.
I certainly see the explanation you're giving, particularly when it comes to fighting corruption and other vices in the oil industry, and of course the benefit for the host communities. Thank you very much, Adeola Yusuf, energy correspondent, for speaking with us.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
All right, we continue with the news. Nigeria's federal government has promised to arrest and prosecute all collaborators and sponsors of the proscribed group, the indigenous peoples of Biafra, also known as IPOB. Nigeria's Minister of Information and Culture, Lai Mohammed, made this known to newsmen in Abuja, the nation's capital. Mohammed says that investigation has confirmed that the group and its recently arrested leader, Nnamdi Kanu, is being sponsored by several highly placed individuals in the society. We are assured, however, that the IPOB leader, who is facing several charges, including treasonable felony, terrorism, illegal possession of firearms, among others, will get a fair hearing in court.
While the investigation continues, we assure you that none of the collaborators, irrespective of their standing in society, will be spared. They will all face the full wrath of the law for their activities that challenge our nation's sovereignty and threatens its unity. No one, no matter how hard it is regarding the country. However, I can assure you that the fear that can deny many of the victims of the violence which he willfully instigated, so his workers and troops will not be denied.
Still on secession talks in Nigeria, police in the southwestern state of Lagos have warned against any plans to hold a proposed Yoruba Nation rally in the state. Commissioner of Police in the state, Hakeem Odumosu, issued the warning on Thursday while also assuring residents of adequate security across the state. Odumosu said no rally will be allowed under any guise in any part of the state. He specifically warned frontman Sunday Igboho and Abandi Akintoye to stay away from the state.
We have found that on no account will any actual or remote activities, including the said planned mega rally, be allowed to lock down states or hinder normal daily activities of the good people of Lagos State. A technical report available to the police command indicates that some disgruntled elements have perfected plans to infiltrate the ranks of the protesters and cause more mayhem and seize the opportunity to attack and loot properties of the law-abiding citizens of the state. Similarly, it has gotten to the knowledge of the command that the organizers, foot soldiers, and mobilizers have concluded plans to embark on procession on the streets of Lagos as part of the program for the mega rally. The effect of this, if allowed to come to fruition, is better known than imagined on the security, traffic, and economic activities of a cosmopolitan state like Lagos.
Staying in Nigeria, the country's parliament has pledged to collaborate with the nation's police force to map out new strategies aimed at bringing an end to the escalating insecurity crisis bedeviling the country. This was as the leadership of the Nigerian police force, led by the Inspector General of Police, Alkali Baba, met with lawmakers from the House of Representatives Committee on Police Affairs to deliberate on strategies aimed at tackling insecurity in the country. Baba, while noting that the job of police in the country should be a collaborative effort by all stakeholders, assured that the police will continue to engage lawmakers in order to come up with modalities for effective policing of the country.
We will give our best in terms of providing desired leadership, to the police personnel in this country. We must say we are grateful to what we have seen so far as a level of commitment from the 9th Assembly towards making our job better and by extension making Nigerians benefit from better security management.
We are not only committed, we are resolute as to giving Nigeria the best police and the best structure that can police this country. And there is no better time than now. Looking at the mood of the nation, it is pertinent at this point for all of us to come together, cross-fertilize idea, look outside the box, and see how to police this country effectively.
In Central Africa, 3 soldiers behind a failed coup in Gabon in 2019 have been sentenced to 15 years in prison. The 3 include Lieutenant Kelly Obiang, who was a member of the elite Republican Guard. They had gone on state television on January 2019, calling for a public uprising during the short-lived coup. The prosecutor said 5 policemen and a civilian who were on trial alongside them were acquitted, adding that the verdict was handed down overnight. The defendants had faced life imprisonment if convicted. The renegade soldiers launched a coup on January 7, 2019, when longtime President Ali Bongo Ondimba was out of the country recuperating from a stroke. Now, let's move to the east, where 3 countries, Burundi, Somalia and Rwanda, are celebrating their independence anniversary today, July 1. Burundi became independent on July 1, 1962, and legally changed its name from Rwanda-Urundi to Burundi. Rwanda, along with Burundi, was part of German East Africa. Meanwhile, the Independence Day of Somalia is a national holiday observed annually on July 1. The date marks the unification of the Trust Territory of Somalia, the former Italian Somalia, and the state of Somaliland. Earlier, we spoke to a reporter at Kigali Law Tidings, Kelly Ramaphosa, on his thoughts on how Rwanda has fared so far.
Such celebrations so far, for the last, I think, since I returned to this country, I've never seen so much celebrations. Well, they mention it, it may be a public holiday, but there are no celebrations for the independence. The group that ushered in independence, that fought for independence, did some wrong things to another group. For example, here we had 2 ethnic groups, the Hutus and the Tutsis. So when the Hutus got the independence, they carried out pogroms against the Tutsis and they ran out of the country. And so it isn't looked at as something that unified the country to a greater extent. So it's so much a disappointment to say. It has strained a lot of things in the country, relations between families, businesses. We really hope so, but we are not so sure because there has been some meetings with the heads of state, but still things go on like that for the last 5 years, I think. So we really hope so, but we are not sure that it will crystallize into something that can change.
Staying in the region, specifically in the Horn of Africa, Ethiopia has called on rebel forces in the Tigray region to adhere to a unilateral ceasefire it declared earlier this week. Foreign Ministry spokesman Dina Mufti told reporters on Thursday that the ceasefire requires both parties to be in agreement. Monday's ceasefire announcement by the federal government came after soldiers pulled out of Tigray's capital, Mekelle, allowing troops from Tigray Defense Forces rebel group to move in. TDF spokesman Getachew Reda has described the ceasefire as a joke. He said on Tuesday that the TDF remains committed to driving all Ethiopian soldiers and their allies out of Tigray. Now, still on the unrest in Ethiopia's Tigray region, the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs says the situation in Tigray remains volatile and unpredictable. Associate UN spokesperson Eri Kaneko stated this on Thursday, adding that major towns, including Mekelle, Adigrat, Adwa, Azem and Sheri remain calm, with unconfirmed reports of clashes in the southern and northern western zones. Kaneko said electricity and telecommunications are still cut off throughout the region, adding that there are no flights or road transportation in or out of the region. She reiterated that the UN, along with partners, is assessing access along main roads to several areas to resume aid delivery.
Good afternoon. Sorry for the delay. Turning to Ethiopia, our humanitarian colleagues say that the situation in Tigray remains volatile and unpredictable. Major towns, including Mekelle, Adigrat, Adwa, Axum, and Shire remain calm, but there are unconfirmed reports of clashes in the southern and northwestern zones. Electricity and telecommunications are still cut off throughout the region. There are no flights or road transportation in or out of the region. Despite this, our humanitarian partners continue to operate in line with humanitarian principles. For example, yesterday, the UN Migration Agency delivered fuel to operate water pumps, as well as firewood for cooking in a few displacement sites in the Mekelle area, benefiting several thousand people. Partners are continuing to bring water into Shire and displacement sites in Mekelle. An international NGO partner continues to provide medical services in Samre town in the southeastern zone. We, along with our partners, are assessing access along main roads to several areas.
Let's go to South Africa, where President Cyril Ramaphosa has been vindicated by the country's constitutional court over donations he received for his 2017 campaign to run for ANC president. The allegations date to 2018, where a report released by the country's public protector accused Ramaphosa of misleading Parliament in relation to a donation he received. But in a long-awaited judgment today, the court found that Ramaphosa neither willfully misled Parliament about a donation he received, nor did he personally benefit from donations made to his campaign for the ANC presidency. We're now joined by political analyst Ongama Mtika to help us understand this judgment a little better. Thank you very much for joining us. Very quickly, please explain to us what was at stake before this judgment. Unfortunately, I can't seem to hear Ongama. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, could you start again, please?
Sure. I was saying the president could be found to have lied before Parliament. And if that happened, he would then, would have needed to be put out. And it's happened before in South Africa, where once a senior government leader was found to have lied, was compelled to actually resign, and there were lots of pressure for them to do so. So that's what was at stake. Also politically, in terms of his standing within the governing party. But the president was vindicated in the sense that it could not be proven on the basis of the facts before the public protector initially and to the constitutional court that there were any basis to allege that he had in fact, inadvertently or deliberately lied before Parliament, something which the constitutional court frowned upon. So also the public protector was berated for the kind of unprofessional and unethical conduct that she undertook in this, and applying and incompetence as well. So yeah, it's a vindication for the president. While it is good as far as legalistic arguments are concerned, questions remain, though, from a moral and ethical perspective about the influence of big business on his campaign and therefore on his tenure as president of the country.
Let's stay with the public protector. They seem to be under a lot of fire at the moment. Could you explain to us what the implication is for the public protector to be so seemingly vilified?
It's the final nail in the coffin for her. She was accused of being aligned to the Jacob Zuma faction, the former president's faction, which, by the way, was seen to be, given to fighting against the implementation of the rule of law in South Africa. So she was seen as somebody who had watered down the office of the public protector in terms of the stature that it had as an advocate for good governance and good state conduct, in the sense that in her reports, one of the issues with that were not necessarily because she's got an anti-regime stance, but she was found to have acted in bad faith on a number of instances, ignored evidence, and there's been a series of cases that she has lost in the courts of the land where people she had found against had taken their decisions on review. So she's really compromised the office of the public protector, and there's a process underway in Parliament to institute proceedings for her removal from office. So this doesn't bode well for her at all.
It doesn't bode well for her, but it seems to be a good thing for the president, Ramaphosa. Tell us, he seems to have this project this image of somebody who is fighting corruption. How will this affect that image? Will it amplify it, or the damage has already been done?
I think that the damage has been done in the sense that the records of those CR17 banking statements did leak into the public domain, and the information that was in the public domain was enough to raise questions of integrity and morality on the part of the president. And this, him being vindicated in the courts, does not deal with that question of how much influence does big business have on him. And it has been a source of his de-campaigning by people within his own political party that are anti his stance. But in the short term, in terms of the politics of the governing party, it does position him well and bolsters the actions that they have taken as a camp within the governing party to act against those that are accused of corruption. And so to that extent, him not being under a legal cloud, at least, does pave the way for the purported cleanup work to continue within the level of the party.
All right, let's talk about party donations. We know before this judgment that the South Africa legislature signed the Political Party Funding Act, forcing parties to declare their donations. How does today's ruling speak to this act? Is it going to help, enforcement, or it's just one of those judgments that will just fall over as time goes on?
In fact, it became apparent that the Political Funding Act had shortcomings, because if you read it, it doesn't cover the internal campaigns of political parties. So people who are contesting office within the political parties, the act is silent on them and what obligations is on them to declare their donors. So that's room for improvement in terms of making the right laws that help us cover and protect the entire political system. By the way, party funding, while it's important in terms of getting parties to be transparent about who funds them and therefore be accountable to South Africans, they don't entirely deal with the tendency to collude between big business and political parties and the exchanges that get made, funding in exchange for influence.
Ngama, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts with us.
Thank you for having me.
It's our pleasure. Coming up on the news, Africa will this weekend receive the first shipment of COVID-19 vaccines donated by the United States. We'll bring you details of this and more when we return. The news continues with updates on the coronavirus. The first shipment of COVID-19 vaccines donated by the United States are expected to arrive in Africa this weekend. Zimbabwean billionaire and member of the African Vaccine Acquisition Trust, Strive Masiyiwa, disclosed this during a weekly-only briefing of the Africa Centers for Disease Control. Mr. Masiyiwa said the donations consisted largely of Pfizer and few Johnson & Johnson vaccines. He said some countries will begin to receive early next week shipments that are Johnson & Johnson, while others will receive shipments that are Pfizer. No country will receive both. The donation, announced last month by the Biden administration, involves 500 million Pfizer coronavirus vaccine doses to the 100 lowest income countries in the world. The U.S. said it will seek no favors in exchange for the doses. Earlier, we spoke to Dr. Gitinje Gitahi on Africa's COVID-19 response.
Well, the Africa CDC, on whose board I sit, actually has been very instrumental under the Africa Union in coordination. Remember that actual action happens only in country. It is in the countries where mobilization of communities happen. It's in the countries where training and deployment of health workers, including community health workers, happens. It's in the countries where, what we call protective personal protective equipment is purchased in the country. So what the Africa CDC has been doing through the virtual meetings is to coordinate, to identify common challenges, to identify common opportunities. Early on, when the Africa CDC started to have this continental, response guided by the then chair of the Africa Union, His Excellency Cyril Ramaphosa, the conversations among countries was able to realize that there were major gaps. Those gaps included the ability to test. When we started the response to the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020, only 2 countries actually were able to test for COVID-19. But because of the joint conversation led by Africa CDC, we're able to roll out now almost every country in Africa has capacity to test, and that has to do with joint procurement and distribution of reagents, also building capacity from country to country.
Tunisian authorities have placed the nation's capital, Tunis, under a partial lockdown from Thursday in a bid to rein in record daily coronavirus cases and deaths. According to the new details, parties, sporting and cultural events, as well as public prayers, are banned in Tunis and its surroundings until July 14. Similar measures are also to be in place in the coastal cities of Sousse and Monastir. The measures also include an overnight curfew from 8 p.m. until 5 a.m. and a ban on cafes and restaurants serving food except outdoors or by delivery. From Tunis, we move to Zimbabwe, where the Judicial Service Commission has announced the immediate closure of its highest courts, the Constitutional and Supreme Courts, following rising COVID-19 infections in the country. The Labour Court was also closed for similar reasons. Thursday's announcement said the closure is to allow for fumigation of the premises and testing of staff. It adds that the 3 courts will reopen on Monday. The JSC recently closed down several other courthouses following COVID-19 infections among users as cases continue to surge in the country. To other health matters, South Sudan has started the rollout of its second dose of routine inactivated polio vaccine among children with support from the Global Vaccine Alliance, Gavi. The rollout was disclosed in a joint statement issued in Juba on Thursday by the UN Children's Fund, World Health Organization, and South Sudan's Ministry of Health. The statement said the latest immunization campaign targets over 592,000 infants below 9 months. The IPV2 immunization will enable the protection of children from paralysis, as South Sudan remains at risk for importation of the wild polio virus and other polio viruses. The organization said the second dose of the vaccine has been introduced to increase protection against all types of polio virus. When the news returns, we will bring you updates from Myanmar, where one of the biggest anti-coup protests in weeks was held in Yangon today. Join us again. now tell you about the protest in Myanmar. Hundreds of protesters took to the streets of Yangon on Thursday, setting fire to an army uniform and chanting calls for democracy. Their actions come 5 months after a military coup ousted elected leader Aung San Suu Kyi. The protest was one of the biggest in Yangon in recent weeks, although demonstrations against the army take place daily in many parts of the Southeast Asian country. The military authorities have branded their opponents terrorists. The army says its takeover was in line with the constitution. It took power alleging fraud in a November election swept by Suu Kyi's party. The former Electoral Commission had dismissed its accusations. And now we will join Lekon Nabanjo for updates in the world of business.
Hello and welcome to Business News on NC Continental Prime. I am Lekon Nabanjo. Food prices in Seychelles have risen by 19%, while non-food commodities are up by 10.5%, according to data released by the country's central bank in May 2021 as compared to a year ago. The governor of the Central Bank of Seychelles, Caroline Abel, said at a press briefing that although most of the commodities are imported, but local dynamics and foreign exchange is one of them. According to the Consumer Index figures released by the country's National Bureau of Statistics in May this year, the highest increase recorded when compared to the same period last year was in meat at 30.13%. Tourism is the top economic contributor of Seychelles, an archipelago in the Western Indian Ocean, followed by fisheries. However, the governor said that there has been an increase in the production of canned tuna, which is an important component in foreign exchange earnings. Now, South Africa's commercial activity rose above expectations in May as the country recorded the largest monthly trade surplus ever, on the rise in exports. The South Africa Revenue Service said that South Africa's trade surplus rose to 54.60 billion rands in May from an upwardly revised 51.26 billion rands in April. The trade balance has remained firmly in the surplus to date, recording 51.2 billion rands in April, marginally narrower than 52.6 billion rands surplus for March. The May trade balance reading easily beat market expectations of 46.5 billion rands trade surplus by a significant margin. SARS said exports increased 1.5% or 2.37 billion rands between April and May to total 163.51 billion rands, boosted by higher shipments of vehicles and transport equipment, vegetables and chemical products to the US, China, Germany, Japan, and the UK. Let's also tell you that the African Development Bank has announced that it has granted $665,000 to support the rehabilitation of the Machipanda Railway, which runs between the Mozambican Port of Beira and the border with Zimbabwe. The grant, which comes from the new Partnership for Africa's Development Infrastructure Projects Preparation Facility Special Fund, will fund the environmental and social impact assessment studies to ensure that the project takes into consideration resilience and sustainability. The rehabilitation project includes welding the ends of new tracks to make them more robust, enabling the railway to bear 60-ton wagons rather than the current maximum of 40 tons. The work is being carried out by the publicly owned Ports and Railway Company. It began in 2019 and will be completed next year at a total cost of around $150 million. Now, let's tell you that Kenya Deposit Insurance Corporation, KDIC, is implementing the risk-based premium assessment for banks effective from midnight, July 1, 2021. This will cause commercial banks to pay additional premiums to the Deposit Authority in the new model based on their risk perception. The new risk-based premium assessment incorporates the standard flat rate of 0.15% of deposits held by each lender, plus an additional factor based on the new risk model. The Deposit Authority says it will cap total premiums to a maximum of 0.25 to each party. Mohammed, KDIC Managing Director, says the new risk-based medium model will end bank failures. It requires lenders to adopt prudent practices and shun enormous appetite for risk. And that's it on Business News on NC Continental Prime. I am Lekon Onobanjo. Do stay tuned as Felicity brings you the rest of the news.
Thank you very much, Lekon. Now, an estimated 70% of Nigeria's farming population are women. But when agricultural grants and aid from the government is disbursed, majority of these women farmers do not get to benefit from such grants and aid. On Jamiangu tonight, News Central's Amadine Uyi takes us to Abuja, Nigeria's federal capital territory, where we hear the challenges of some female farmers as they seek access to agricultural funding and aid.
With over 200 million in population and an estimated annual growth rate of 3%, Nigeria is the world's most populous black nation. Nigeria, Africa's biggest economy, also covers about 92.4 million hectares of land, while 53% of its population lives in rural areas. Also, with a youth bulge of about 60 to 70% under the age of 35 years, Nigeria also boasts of a strong youth population. However, this population accounts for a high unemployment rate, with Nigeria's federal government unable to provide jobs for its teeming youths. Many believe agriculture holds the key to solving an acute food scarcity and an escalating unemployment rate. However, 70% of Nigeria's farming population are women. Nigeria's federal government has in the past initiated several intervention programs in agriculture aimed at reaching out to this demography. Unfortunately, a visit to some rural communities revealed programs initiated by government does not trickle down to the grassroots. Comfort Sunday, one such farmer, also the head of the Federal Capital Territory Small-Scale Women Farmers Association, says women farmers don't benefit from such initiatives.
Sometimes we used to hear, but you can't even see where to get the support. And I never get the support.
A visit to the Kwale and Gwagwalada area councils, where we met several other women farmers, saw them confirm Comfort's position.
Program na zuwa na ji ama wannan suna sa shi a hanyar politics. We go hear from area council. And many people, if you are APC and I'm a APC ne kai PDP ne, to APC ne ana ruling yanzu. Don program din ya zo zaka ji daga area council ne ya zo wurin chairman, zaka ji wanda ya yi mishi zabe sune za zabe su je su yi program din. Ba duka ce community duka program ya zo abun amfani mu samu babu.
I heard of COVID-19 loan. I heard of survivor fund. I even hear of one going on now. They are giving to women 20,000, but I don't even know how they do it. They go about it.
Many of them also add that beyond not having access to intervention from Nigeria's federal government, they face other challenges like inadequate finance, lack of access to fertile farming lands, and a lack of access to farming inputs.
We need support. We women, we need support. May government give us grants. We will do better than what we are doing now. We want to do, but some people don't even have access to even go for the business, because not business.
A visit to the Buzunkure axis of Abuja, located at the Kuje Area Council, where we met Laraba Obadiah, reveals that despite billions budgeted by Nigeria's federal government, women farmers across the federal capital face the same challenges.
Shekara 25 wanda na fara noma ban samu wani taimako ba na gwamnati ba, sai dai muna fama ne. Ina samu kaɗan takin zamani da na amfani yanzu san sai da mudu in yi amfani da shi. Ban samu na gwamnati ba, taba je ba, ban samu wannan labari na ba da kudi rance a je a yi noma da shi ba.
Some of them say they think they can achieve a lot with help from government. They insist that farming is the only occupation they have known all their lives, which has helped them to cater for their families.
Gaskiya muna neman taimako a gurin government da shike mun mata mun ba da kai mu cewa za mu yi gwannan domin mun duba mun gani gwannan yana taimako yana yi mu taimako idan mutum ya yi gwana abinci ya fita ba za mu sha wahalan abinci kuma ba zan je kasuwa jin saya ba to damuwa mu yaya za mu yi nane za mu irin shuki wani lokaci kaman especially shinkafa ba mu same shi na iri wanda za mu yi shuki wani beans kuma muna kokarin mu yi amma ba mu samu irin.
With agriculture generating about 21% of Nigeria's gross domestic product in 2015 alone, many will admit more can still be done to support women farmers. While Nigeria's federal government insists hundreds of billions have been invested to support farming at the grassroots level and tackle a rising poverty challenge, it is clear that government needs to change its strategy to reach this target farming population. Women farmers like Amina, Comfort, Olabisi, Laraba and Godia will be hoping government matches its words with action.
Indeed, a lot can be done to empower female farmers in Nigeria. We now join Udoka Njoku for the rest of sports news.
All right, in sports, let's start off with the World Athletics Championships. Nairobi's Zedi Chesaya has qualified to represent Kenya in high jump at the World Athletics Under-20 Championships, due to start on the 17th to the 22nd of August in Nairobi. Chesaya beat teammate Dazev Nyajameli in a tiebreak to win after they each scaled 1.68 meters. Chesaya cleared all her jumps at 1.50, 1.55, 1.60, 1.65 and 1.68 meters respectively. However, Jameli failed on her first attempt at 1.65 meters before succeeding on her second attempt. Now, that is what saw her lose to Chesaya. Now, Central Rift athletes Levi Kivet and Emmanuel Kiplagat dominated to win the men's 5,000 meters semifinals. Moving over to some transfer stories now, MP has the first team head coach Helmi Tulan has confirmed that his right back Karim Fouad has signed a deal to sign for Egyptian Premier League champions Al Ahly. Fouad came into limelight with Nugum FC in 2019 after being promoted to the first team. After a promising season, his first season at the club, he was acquired by MP on a loan deal after Nugum got relegated. The 21-year-old became an instant starter and has made 50 appearances since. According to his agent, John Edward, Fouad has received many foreign offers, but then the right back prefers to join Cairo Giants Al Ahly, and it was reported recently that the Red Devils had reached an agreement with Fouad in order for him to join them starting next season. So talking about sports now, moving over to tennis. Ukraine's Elena Svitolina became the latest women's singles seed to suffer an early exit at Wimbledon as the 2019 semi-finalist was beaten in straight sets by Poland's Magda Linette. Third seed Svitolina, who lost to eventual champion Simona Halep in the semi-finals 2 years ago, was beaten 6-3, 6-4 in her second round match. The 26-year-old's defeat comes after fourth and fifth seeds Sofia Kenin and Bianca Andreescu exited the championships, and that was on Wednesday. Now, seven-time winner Serena Williams has already crashed out of the tournament when she withdrew from injury, while defending champion Simona Halep and world number 2 Naomi Osaka were both absent from the draw. Now it leaves world number 1 Ashley Barty, second seed Aryna Sabalenka, and 2020 French Open champion Iga Swiatek as the only remaining top 10 ranked players at the Grand Slam midway through the second round matches. And lastly, let's talk about football now. The World Health Organization said that crowds at the Euro 2020 soccer stadiums and in pubs and bars in host cities are driving the current rise in the coronavirus infections in Europe. The number of new cases rose by 10% last week. Now, the WHO said that Europe had seen a 10-week decline in new coronavirus infections before the Games. Now the rise in new COVID-19 cases is happening as the more contagious Delta virus variant spreads rapidly across the continent.
To look at is around the stadia, how are people getting there? Are they traveling in large, crowded convoys of buses? Are they taking individual measures when they're doing that? What's happening after the Games when people leave the stadiums? Are they going into crowded bars and pubs to watch the matches? And we've said that should these things, this mixing happen, there will be cases. Because if this mixing is happening among people who are not fully vaccinated, and there is the presence of the virus, there will be cases.
And the rise in infections has raised concern that a third wave could spread across Europe in the autumn if people don't get vaccinated. And that's a wrap on Sports Update on NC Continental Prime. I'm Udoka Njoku. Head back to Felicity Ezewike.
Thank you very much, Udoka. The COVID-19 pandemic seems to be affecting absolutely everything. We'll join you next time. For entertainment stories now, legendary songwriter and musician Steve Kekana has died after a long illness. Kekana was most well known for his hit song in the 1980s, Take Your Love. Kekana has produced over 40 albums in his career. He lost his sight at the age of 5. Despite this, aside from being a legendary musician, he also became an advocate in his later life. He was recently appointed lecturer of law at the University of South Africa. In 2018, he was awarded South African Music Awards Lifetime Achievement in 2018. That's it on entertainment. It's now time to check out what to expect in terms of sunshine and precipitation across the African continent. And that's all at this hour. But before we go, let's take another look at some of the top stories. Nigeria's upper legislative chamber has passed the controversial Petroleum Industry Bill 13 years after it was first presented. South Africa's highest court has cleared President Cyril Ramaphosa of allegedly willfully misleading lawmakers over campaign donations. And finally, we told you that African countries will this weekend receive the first shipment of COVID-19 vaccines donated by the United States. To follow us on social media, we are at News Central TV. You can download our mobile app on App Store and Play Store. You can also watch News Central live on Star Times Channel 274, Apple TV Channel 23, Vision 247, Free TV, and on YouTube. As always, thank you very much for your kind attention. My name is Felicity Ezewike. Have a good evening.